Welcome to Summertime is Reading Time in the Diamond. My name is John Popp, and I am a physicist. I often volunteer with the Fleet Science Center in Balboa Park, San Diego. I am excited to be reading to you during this week of science. I'm reading to you today with the permission of the publisher, Chronicle Books. The title of our book is On a Beam of Light. It was written by Jennifer Byrne and illustrated by Vladimir Radunsky. Illustrated means he drew the pictures for us. Wasn't that nice? And Jennifer wrote the words. The scientist we will read about today is Albert Einstein. He was one of the most famous physicists in the history of physics and all sciences. A physicist is a scientist who studies the smallest particles and atoms as well as the largest stars and the universe. The atoms are, by the way, some of the smallest things we know about. And there are some things even smaller than that. Atoms, though, also are made of even smaller pieces of things. On a Beam of Light. The title of the book again is On a Beam of Light. Begins this way. Over 100 years ago, as the stars swirled in the sky, as the earth circled the sun, as the March winds blew through a little town by a river, a baby boy was born. His parents named him Albert. That's Albert there, see? Isn't he cute? There's Albert's mother and father, I guess. Albert turned 1 year old, and he didn't say a word. I don't think that's always true. Albert turned 2, and he didn't say a word. Oh dear. Albert turned 3, and hardly said a word at all. I think I'd be worried about Albert. He just looked around with his big curious eyes, looked and wondered, looked and wondered. His parents worried. Little Albert was so different. Was there something wrong? But he was their baby, and they loved him, no matter what. So different, his daddy said, but so dear, his mother said. One day when Albert was sick in bed, his father brought him a compass. Oh yeah, a small round case with a magnet needle inside. No matter which way Albert turned the compass, the needle always pointed north, as if held by an invisible hand. Albert was so amazed, his body trembled. Suddenly he knew there were mysteries in the world, hidden and silent, unknown and unseen. He wanted more than anything to understand those mysteries. Here's Albert looking at his compass. Do you know how a compass works? Why does a compass always point north? Well, Albert wondered that too, I guess. Albert started asking questions. Questions at home, questions at school. So many questions that some of his teachers told him he was a distraction to his class. They said he would never amount to anything unless he learned to behave like all the other students. But Albert didn't want to be like the other children. He wanted to discover the hidden mysteries of the world. I guess that's his teacher, making Albert feel bad. But he knew better. And I bet he continued to ask questions. One day, as Albert was zipping through the countryside on his bicycle, he looked up at the beams of sunlight speeding from the sun to the earth. He wondered, what would it be like to ride one of those beams? a beam of sunlight. And in his mind, right then and there, Albert was no longer on his bicycle, no longer on the country road. He was racing through space on a beam of light in his imagination, probably, huh? Not for real. It was the biggest, most exciting thought Albert ever had, and it filled his mind with more questions. Albert is going to ask questions all his life. Albert is studying books to answer questions, right? That's how you can answer questions too. Have you ever read any books in science? Maybe you would like to do that too. Albert began to read and study. He read about light and sound, about heat and magnetism, and about gravity, the invisible force that pulls us down towards our planet and keeps the moon from floating away into outer space. Gravity is what makes us stay on the earth and not float away. So he wondered about all these things. Oh, it looks like he got into mathematics to me. A lot of numbers here. And he read about numbers and loved numbers. They were like a secret language for figuring things out. But all that reading still didn't answer all of Albert's questions. So he kept on reading, wondering, and learning. Learning lots of things. Learning is fun, especially when you have all the questions Albert has. When Albert graduated from college, he wanted to teach the subjects he loved, all the things he had read about all those years. But Albert couldn't find a job as a teacher, so he got another job. Oh my, I think Albert would have been a good teacher. Have you ever wondered about things? Do you have questions that people can't tell you the answer to easily? Albert sure did. A simple, quiet job in a government office is the job he got. An office where he worked with other people's ideas and inventions. He did this work very well and very quickly, so quickly that he had lots of extra time to think and wonder. Well, how about that? Have a job where you can have extra time to think and wonder. Do what you love doing. There's Albert in his office, government office, thinking and wondering. Now what? Albert watched, let me start again. Albert watched a lump of sugar dissolve and disappear into his hot tea. How could this happen? Who would wonder about such a thing? But Albert did. He watched the smoke from his pipe swirl and disappear into the air. How could one thing disappear into another? The smoke is disappearing into the air. How could that happen? He wondered that too. Then he began to figure it out. He thought about the idea that everything is made of teeny tiny moving bits of stuff, far too tiny to see, little bits called atoms. Some people didn't believe that atoms existed. By Albert's figuring, he helped prove that everything in the world is made of atoms, even sugar and tea, even smoke and air, even Albert and you. Now, there are some things that are not made of atoms. Actually, light is not made of atoms. And other, what are called elementary or basic particles, exist in the world, and they're not part of atoms either. They're different stuff. Even this book is made of atoms. So most of the things that you see and handle and you yourself are made of atoms. So that was mostly true. Then Albert thought about motion. He realized that everything is always moving, moving through space, moving through time. Even sound and asleep, we're moving as our planet circles the sun and as our lives travel into the future. Albert saw time and space as no one ever had before. Time and space do some of the same things, you see. They move, they change. They never stop moving, really. Albert wrote down his new ideas, put them into envelopes, and sent them to science magazines. The magazines printed everything Albert sent. He hoped that scientists and professors would be interested, and they were very interested indeed. They asked Albert to come work with them and teach with them. For the first time in his life, people started to say, Albert is a genius. Now Albert could spend all his days doing what he loved, imagining, wondering, figuring, and thinking. What a nice way to make a living, do things that you love to do. Albert Einstein is a genius, all these other people are saying. And they're professors in physics and other fields, too. Albert thought about very, very big things, like the size and shape, oh my God, of the entire universe. That's a big thing. He thought about very, very small things, like what goes on inside the atoms that everything is made of. He thought about mysterious forces like magnetism and gravity. He discovered whole new ways to understand how all these things worked. Now, one question you might have that would be very interesting to find the answer to is, how did people learn that many of the things, including ourselves, are made of atoms if you can't see them? They're so tiny, they're so little. Well, that's another big mystery, and Albert helped solve some of that too. Too small to see, but other ways were found to discover that they're real. Albert had his own boat. He sailed too. Everywhere Albert went, he would think and think. One of Albert's favorite thinking places was his little sailboat. He loved to let his mind wander as the wind blew him across the river. He must have lived by a river to do that, huh? There's equations that Albert wrote. This is mathematics, physics, equations that answered new questions. Albert came up with some of these equations for the first time ever in the whole world. Sometimes when Albert was having a tough time with a tricky problem, he would put it aside and play his violin. Music made Albert very happy. He said it helped him think better. I wonder if he had animal friends too. Oh, he also played the violin. I remember reading about that. Let's see. Albert even chose his clothes by thinking. What? Albert even chose his clothes for thinking? His favorites were his comfy old saggy baggy sweaters and pants and shoes without socks. He said now that he was grown up, no one could tell him to put on his socks. My feet are happier without socks, he said, pointing at his shoes, huh? No socks. What a silly man. But he did things his own way. In the town where he lived, he became known for wandering around, deep in thought, sometimes eating an ice cream cone. Always recognizable with his long wild hair, which by then had become quite white. There he is. Not even no socks, but no shoes. eating his ice cream, long, wavy, gray hair. There's that doggy again. I wonder if that was his. Look, what kind of things did he like to do? Can you tell what he's doing there? I think I know. And there, his sailboat. What's he doing there and there? He liked to do a lot of things. Everywhere Albert went, he tried to figure out secrets of the universe. And he never forgot about the beam of light that he rode so long ago in his imagination. Albert figured out that no person, nothing, could ever zoom through space as fast as a beam of light. Now, how did he figure that out? How could he know such a thing? By thinking very hard about it. He figured that if he could travel near the speed of light, crazy things would happen. Only minutes would pass for Albert. Time would move more slowly, is what that means. If he moved very fast, time would move slower for him than for other people, while years and years went by for the rest of us. Only a little bit of time would go by for Albert if he moved fast. What a crazy idea, but turned out to be true. The idea was so amazing, people didn't believe it at first. But scientists today have proven that it's true. And they couldn't do that for a while. They had to think about this too, and think hard, and find ways to prove that what Albert said, only by thinking about it did he come up with these ideas. He didn't do experiments, but other experiments did experiments, and proved that he was right. So he became a big hero to everybody. Albert thought and figured about the very last minute of the very last day of his life. He asked questions never asked before, found answers never found before, and dreamed up ideas never dreamed before. Wouldn't it be fun to think of a new idea that was actually true that nobody else thought of before? That would be exciting. And I think that excited Albert a lot. Albert's ideas helped build spaceships and satellites that travel to the moon and beyond. His thinking helped us understand the universe as no one ever had before. But still, Albert left us many big questions, questions that scientists are working on today, questions that someday you might answer, questions you might think of the questions first, too. By wondering, thinking, and imagining. There's a whole bunch of questions, huh? You have any yet? Well, if not now, maybe someday. Well, let's see. That's not for us to read, but here's something we might talk a little bit about. Einstein's favorite little cup. He had a favorite cup. And there's a famous equation he wrote that nobody wrote before him that said energy and matter are the same thing. Someday maybe you'll understand, learn about that better, and understand what that equation means. Very simple equation, very deep meaning. He had a favorite compass, and he smoked a pipe. I think we saw before maybe that he played a fiddle. He had shoes that he didn't wear very much, I guess. Okay, I don't know what that is. They hid that on us. And he had his baggy pants. He was a funny man, and people found him charming and wonderful. The end. Well, not the end, really, because people are still doing the same things that Albert did. Maybe someday you'll be a scientist, and you'll find answers to questions that nobody thought of, maybe even questions that nobody thought of before, just like Albert. That was fun, huh? Here's one last idea in the back of the book. I didn't know that was there. We almost missed it. It's in quotation marks. That means that Albert Einstein is the one who said this. The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing. Curiosity is also part of what makes us human beings and different from all the other animals in the world. Thank you for joining us. Please go to Deep Space Book page to let us know if you liked the book. Also, please don't forget to record all of the Read-Aloud books that you listen to in your summer reading log so you can win prizes from the library.